This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Hello and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I am Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world, happenings in politics, in economics, in international news, everything that we interact with throughout our week and daily. The many types of media that we are exposed to these days, and the ever-increasing amounts of media that we're exposed to these days. We take a step back, we look at it from a higher perspective. We put it in the healthiest way of dealing with information that sort of flies out at you. Information that's often or can often seem toxic in nature. So we take that step back. Now, how do we do that? Well, if you've listened to the show before, you know my perspective on it. My perspective is a metaphysical perspective, which basically means that we, as beings, exist beyond our physical existence, of which we are well aware, that we exist on a higher level, and that from that level, we are creating everything that we are experiencing on the smaller level, kind of like a virtual reality game, in which we are the players actively involved, or we are experiencing something that is ultimately illusion. An illusion created by us to engage us, to involve us, and ultimately to reconnect us with the highest level of our being, to help us expand. So in taking that perspective, anything that we see out in the world, we know is coming from within us. We know may hold a bit of a challenge to go into and find the energy. But once you do that, you are empowered. And little by little, the things that pushed your buttons, the things that made you feel overwhelmed or anxious or depressed, the things that made you doubt the world as a good place, little by little you'll find those changing. Maybe not even little by little, maybe overnight. Happens with some people. So we take a step back, and through that approach, which I have explained, we find a wellness approach to dealing with what can often feel like toxic energy coming from our media and our smartphones and our Facebooks and what have you. So it's a technique that may take some time. I hope that you find it worthy, but I know there are people who listen to this show who are spiritual seekers, and there are others who are not so spiritual. But in any event, even if you find my approach a bit mystifying, all that metaphysical stuff, I know that people have been able to find something practical, something helpful in the approach of taking a step back without judgment of anything, letting go, and just being for a bit. It is a practical approach, as well as, I believe, a spiritual approach. Well, enough said about that. Today is the Academy Awards, so there's a big focus, a big attention worldwide on movies. So I felt this would be a great time to do an episode on spirituality, film, and healing. Some of you may know that I made a film, oh my goodness, it's about 12 years ago now, called Spirituality in Film, A Shamanic Journey. It's still available at Amazon Video for online streaming. It's a bit dated now, I guess, because it's been about 12 years and there have been lots of films made since that time that I might have wanted to include or could have included. But it does give a basic idea of the idea of spirituality in film, how it's often portrayed, how film is a conduit or can be a conduit for spiritual connections. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, you can find that video at Amazon and take a look. As I said, much has changed since I made it. So I'll be talking about some of those things today, and I'll actually be looking at the Oscar films that are nominated and talking about some examples of spiritual films or films in which there is an inherent spirituality. But first I want to talk about something that demands our attention more and more. And it has to do with a deep level of healing our country is sorely in need of. And I'm saying specifically the United States of America, although there are other countries that also are struggling with this issue, but none, I think, as much as the United States of America. And that is on the issue of race. And along those same lines, the issues of gender also have a similar or parallel development and a need for healing. But I'm going to focus on race today because it's much in the news, and as you know, this is a topical show, so we tend to focus on topics that are foremost in the news to see what we gain from them. Perhaps understand what's being created and how we can use that. I say race has been a source of, or a source of difficulty in this country in a way that I don't think it is in other countries. Specifically because of the concept of separation. Because in the end, that's really what it is. The idea that was enacted, that was put forward, and widely believed for centuries. of the inherent inferiority of a race of people. Simply because they look different or may have different attributes, even different abilities. There was much literature in the 18th and 19th centuries, and, at that time, what was considered to be proven scientific research showing African Americans to be genetically inferior. And showing, white Europeans to be, the superior race, and therefore they were entitled to do pretty much whatever they wanted to do. They were not able to, and to this day many people are not able to see people of color as human beings in the same way that they are. And this has been the deep and abiding wound in this country. Since its inception. Now, obviously, we've moved quite a bit away from those original theories. We've proven them bogus. However, it still is a matter of separation, connection. We need healing in these areas. And we get to healing by understanding our oneness. And once we understand our oneness, things change. And that goes for gender issues as well. This country, because of these issues, tends to be so distracted, to lose focus, on the importance of what Martin Luther King referred to as the content of one's character. We tend to focus on or hear so much about, the first black president, the first black mayor in this area, the first black governor of this state, the first female black politician to do this, or all of these things, which are very, important milestones to note. And it does give one a feeling that things are changing for the better. This may be a feeling that is not quite borne out, as we have seen after having elected the first African American or the first biracial president for 8 years. Then we seem to take a right turn and the reason is simply because the healing was not there. While many people felt that things had changed, race relations in the country were healing due to the fact that an African American or a perceived African American, again, he was biracial, and to me that's a much bigger or different issue, but I won't go there right now since we're just talking about this. But during his presidency, almost immediately, issues began to pop up. And underneath, because the healing wasn't there, there was a growing resentment that would eventually turn into things like the Tea Party movement